If you've been watching television recently, you can't have avoided seeing Mona Eltahawy. She's been a star on every television network and speaking on Arab and Muslim issues all over the place. She's been a columnist for Qatar's Al Arab newspaper, for the Jerusalem Report, Israel, from publications in Denmark and Canada. I'm not going to go on because she's really written for almost everybody, and now she talks for almost everybody all the time. But somehow, in between talking, she finds out things other people don't seem to cotton on to so easily. We're honored to have her with us as part of the panel today. And Steve Clemons, who's going to moderate, he's a senior fellow and former executive vice president over at the New America Foundation. And he founded their American Strategy Program. He is, among other things, was the first executive director of the Nixon Center, which is a very fine think tank here, despite its name. So having dutifully exerted my influence to cause confusion, I leave you with Steve Clemons, the panel, and a very fascinating morning.
Thank you so much, Sam. I got to say there, Mona.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, J Street, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here to share with you my excitement at the best time of my life, basically. This is, hands down, the happiest and most exciting time for everybody I know from the Middle East and North Africa. As much as it hurts my heart and I'm sickened to my soul at the horrendous violence that Muammar Gaddafi has unleashed on his people, it's not a civil war in Libya. It's a war waged by the deranged Gaddafi against courageous Libyans, and Libyans will win this war. I know they will. So I'm happy to be here to share the excitement with you, but I've got to tell you, when the uprising started in Tunisia, and the questions first started out, how will this affect Israel? I was really pissed off, because it wasn't about Israel. None of this has been about Israel. This has been all along about the freedom and dignity of people who for years have been suffocated and strangled by dictators, supported by Israel and the US administration, knowing full well that it was at the sacrifice of our freedom and dignity. And so my initial reaction was, for once it's not about you. Be happy that it's not about you. Stop being so narcissistic. It's about us for a change.
Very good.
And so it started in Tunisia, and everybody said, this isn't supposed to happen. All the so-called experts told us it could never happen because we, the Arabs, are passive and we love our strong-fisted dictators and we will never do anything about it. Well, we did, and we're doing. And then they said, well, it can't happen anywhere outside of Tunisia because the Tunisians are educated and they're secular and it's going to stop there. And then it came to Egypt and I said, no way, Hosni Mubarak, our best friend in the region, it's never going to happen. Egyptians are X, Y, and Z. And we did it. And then they said, nowhere outside of Egypt. And guess what? Everywhere in the region, nobody is being left unaffected. As I was leaving my hotel today, I was hearing about Oman. Oman, who saw Oman coming? Oman, Libya, Bahrain, Yemen. Yemen is in day 17. There's a hashtag. For those of you who are not on Twitter, it's all about hashtags. And there is a hashtag, and that is that number sign that you use in Twitter to basically categorize everything under themes. And this is how revolutions are being planned in the Middle East and North Africa now. And there is even a hashtag with the date, March 11 for Saudi Arabia, the one country where this can't happen. Nobody will be unaffected. And so when I say this, do you think that uprisings and revolutions that are about the freedom and dignity of people, do you think they're going to stop outside of Palestinians? Do you think that freedom and dignity stops outside of the borders of Palestinians? Of course not. In 2007, I went to give a lecture at Tel Aviv University as part of their commemoration of the 30th anniversary of Anwar Sadat's visit to Israel to speak at the Knesset. I went and spoke, just before I went, I did a very, very small, very informal survey of Egyptians that I knew. And I specifically chose Egyptians who I call Generation Camp David. I give everybody a generation. Generation Facebook, Generation Twitter. These were Generation Camp David because these were all young Egyptian men and women who were born after the 1979 Camp David Accords. And I said to them, look, I'm going to Israel to speak about the 30th anniversary of Sadat's visit. Do you have a message for Israel? It was just 15 of them. It wasn't scientific in any way. Just 15 young people I knew. Every single one of them, with the exception of maybe one, said, tell the Israelis that we will continue to hate them until they stop their occupation and until they start treating Palestinians with dignity. Hands down. The reason I mentioned that these are young people who were born after the Camp David Accord is important. I was born in 1967, one war with Israel. I remember vividly in 1973, another war with Israel. Two of my uncles fought in 1973. Every single family in Egypt has been affected by war with Israel. These younger people have not grown up with war in the background, but they don't need war in the background because they see what happens to Palestinians on a daily basis and they don't like it. The revolution that happened in Egypt, we don't know who our next government will be, but we want it to be a free and fairly elected government. But I'll tell you what will not change in Egypt. Nobody wants to go to war in Egypt. We did not spend all this time trying to get rid of Hosni Mubarak so that we can go to war with anybody. So I don't think the Camp David Accords will be affected. But I'll tell you what else will be affected. The hatred for Israel will not end. It will not end until you lift the siege on Gaza, you being Israel. You start treating Palestinians as human beings who deserve freedom and dignity. This will not change. This is number one, freedom and dignity. A friend of mine recently went on a tour of the region. He went to Tunisia, he went to Jordan, and he went to Syria, an analyst. And he spoke to the Tunisians after their revolution, and he spoke to Islamists, and he spoke to communists. A communist Tunisian gave him a beautiful quote that I think sums up what's going on in the region wonderfully. He said to him, as a Tunisian, my feet are in Tunisia. My mind is in the West, in France, in the United States. I love the literature, I love the culture, I'm very secular, but my heart is in the East and with Palestinians. And I will not be a full and open friend to the West, who my mind admires and wants to befriend, until Palestinians get their freedom and dignity. This is key. The Islamists that he spoke to, he said to them, look, you guys don't have a position on Israel. You've been in the opposition for such a long time, and in the opposition, it's very easy to sloganeer, it's very easy to say this, and we'll do, we won't do, but come up with a position that you can articulate about Israel. They're still working on it. But when he pushed them, they said to him, we will support whatever the Palestinians want. And that is a big deal, to have an Islamist in Tunisia say, we will support whatever the Palestinians want. This is the time for Israel to sit down and not just talk about peace with the Palestinians, but to make real, concrete concessions. Because I was on Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, and she played a segment that Benjamin Netanyahu said about Egypt. And it was shameful. He said, we must be concerned because we saw what happened in Iran, where the revolution was hijacked by right-wing religious extremists. And she said to me, Mona, what do you think about this? I said to her, you know, it's quite ironic to hear the Israeli Prime Minister talk about religious right-wing extremists when his government is very friendly and includes religious right-wing extremists that extremely concern myself and many people in the Arab world. So let's not throw stones here. And number two, and then I had a wonderful argument with Alan Dershowitz on CNN. Some of you might have seen this. My new friend, Alan Dershowitz. And he actually had the nerve to sit there and say, you have to be careful because democracy can bring you a Hitler and I don't know what, and Ahmadinejad. I said to him, you like Mubarak so much, take him. We don't want him. Hosni Mubarak, who was supported by Israel and the US administration, is the same Hosni Mubarak who not only denied us freedom and dignity, but who used state-controlled media to fan the flames of hate towards Israel in the United States. Have you forgotten this? This is the guy that you supported against our revolution? So it's not only ironic, it's hypocritical, and it reeks of double standards to sit there and support Hosni Mubarak just because of Camp David. What has happened in the Middle East and North Africa and continues to happen is a seismic shift. It's not about this one man controlling us anymore. It's about the people speaking. The people have woken up. The people have said it's about us and it's not about you. And if you want to be at peace with anybody in the Middle East and North Africa, you talk to the people. Stop talking to the men who have suffocated us for decades. Talk to the people about what freedom and dignity means for us and the Palestinians. And those same men who have been suffocating us, you've seen them one by one go on live television and try to make concessions when it's too late. Tunisian president, 3 speeches and he was out. Hosni Mubarak, 3 speeches, 3 strikes and you're out. And every time they made a speech, they were always 10 days too late. If they had made the same speech 10 days earlier, they might have found someone to listen. It was always 10 days too late. So my question to J Street and my question to Israel is, do you want to be 10 days too late? Do you want to be like these dictators that the Israeli Prime Minister loves so fondly? Do not be 10 days too late. And right now, the people have outpaced everyone. The people have outpaced our dictators. They have outpaced the US administration. Have you seen the administration every 2 days fumbling to come up with a coherent position as people are being slaughtered in the streets of Libya? They also have been outpaced. So do not be outpaced and try to be ahead of the curve. If you're going to be 10 days too late, you also will be forgotten in the same way that every one of our dictators and leaders have been forgotten. So here's my challenge for you. Every Egyptian and every Tunisian who has managed to get rid of the unriddable, Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali and Mubarak, through a beautiful, non-violent revolution, in which not one country's flag was burnt, in which not one anti-Israeli or anti-American sentiment was expressed, because it was about Tunisia and it was about Egypt. It was wonderful. It had the best of Gandhi and Martin Luther King combined. That spirit now, they're saying it's time to march for the freedom and dignity of our Palestinian sisters and brothers. And we will. So my challenge to you is, make a call. Make a call as J Street, make a call as Israelis and say, it's time for the revolution for freedom and dignity of Palestinians. And if you make that call, I will be there. I will be marching with each and every single one of you, peacefully, non-violently, for the freedom and dignity of Palestinians. It is about time, and it's something that everybody in the region is thinking about. It does not stop, and this is not something that is supposed to scare you. This is supposed to be something that you must reach out and embrace. Non-violence. For the longest time we've been told Arabs are violent and they only understand the language of violence. You have seen millions of Arabs who have peacefully dismantled a dictatorship in Egypt of 30 years, a dictatorship in Tunisia of 23 years. Embrace them, reach out to them and say, we salute your non-violence, we salute your freedom and dignity, and we too will march for the freedom and dignity of Palestinians. And I guarantee you will be met with Arabs from every single country in the region, Arabs and non-Arabs, in the Middle East and North Africa. Call for that non-violent revolution of freedom and dignity for Palestinians, and I will be there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mona.